Hey everyone, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I'm Alana Yvonne with Truly Great Life, and today we will be talking about way number 6, which is critical thinking. Now, in the field of positive psychology, it's officially referred to as judgment. That can easily be misunderstood as like being judgy. So I like to really use the term critical thinking. And this is a very interesting character strength because there's a lot of different ways we can talk about it today. And I am sure you have lots of opinions and experiences and thoughts about this particular character strength. I'll begin just by reminding, if you have not already seen way number 1 and way number 2, those are kind of foundational to all of these. So I'd encourage you to look at those when you get a chance. But a quick reminder is that these character strengths are in all of humanity. They're like muscles that maybe we're not aware that we have all of them. There are officially 24 within from the field of positive psychology. And like certain muscles, we don't always know that we have them, and we certainly don't use them, all of them, or we use some of them more than others. So when it comes to critical thinking, it seems like if you look out at the world today, how much is this character strength being used? I'll just throw that out there to you. In your opinion, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is like, we are living in times where critical thinking and the ability to, and I'll go into the definition in a minute, but critical thinking is something that we are seeing at an unprecedented level on a scale of 1 to 10. And 0 is like, we're back in some kind of dark ages plus. Just to think about. That's kind of like on a wacky macro level. And then like on a micro level, in your own life, how much do you feel you use this strength of critical thinking? How much do you use it at work? How much do you use it with your own personal endeavors? How much do you use it in your relationships? All right, so let's jump in. So what in the world is critical thinking? There is so much out there, and of course, depending on what your experience is and where you're coming from, you likely have a lot of different definitions. I'll share with you some of the ways to think about it include, you're thinking through all sides. Thinking through all sides. You're not jumping to conclusions. You can change your mind in light of evidence. Okay, changing your mind. Let's just put that out there. This open-mindedness to being wrong. The possibility of not having all the answers. The willingness to consider there might be alternatives to what you think. Weighing all the evidence fairly, right? An open-mindedness. Being able to see things from like a 360 perspective. Because kind of like, what animal is it? There are animals that like their eyes are here and they can see all around and behind and this. We humans, as far as I'm aware, our eyes, we can only, like looking straight ahead, looking straight ahead and then to the sides. That's where we have our blind spots, right? We have our blind, I can't even see my hands, right? Oh, there, okay. So when you are aware that you have blind spots, when you accept the fact that you have biases, meaning like you lean towards certain things as being true or preferable or ideal or whatever, how much of an ability or a willingness, a desire to see things from someone else's shoes, someone else's perspective, some other source, how much critical thinking where it's not just about maybe what feels right or the way it should be or the ideal or what we'd like it to be. And those are important things, of course. We're just talking about right now character strength of critical thinking. Okay? So let's just say, keeping an open mind, able to look at different viewpoints, able to look at all of the evidence for whatever it is without prejudging it, okay? So thinking through all sides, not jumping to conclusions. Let's stay with that. There are many, many rabbit holes that we could go down. All right, so critical thinking, again, this is a character strength we all have, but now that, I've kind of shared a little bit of the definition, like, again, is this something that you feel is one of your top character strengths? Like, is this a really easy, effortless kind of character strength that you tap into all the time? Is this something that gives you energy when you use it? Is it something that you feel this quality is kind of like essential to who you are? If we were to like take out this critical thinking muscle, this critical thinking strength, do you feel like you wouldn't be you, right? And again, with all of these are different ways to happiness, okay? Now, I know some of you may be thinking, I don't need to consider other opinions, or I know they're wrong, or I know that this is BS, or it's not right, or something like that. So the reason why this is a strength and that it contributes to thriving and flourishing, right, is because, and this ties into humility, which we'll get into in a future video, but let's just all accept or agree that we don't have all the answers, and that things that we understand to be true have been proven not to be true. So, for example, an example that's not like charged, right? Pluto's no longer a planet, technically, right? When I was growing up, that was definitely one of the 9 planets, and now it's 8. Am I getting that right? I'm really not a science person, but this is, an example of there's worldviews, right, on a grander scale, which can influence societies and cultures and organizations and schools and families. And then, it turns out that they're not necessarily true, or we didn't really fully understand the picture. And so, the ability to be curious about that, the ability to be open to being wrong. Oh my gosh. It's like, what would the world be like if more people were open to the possibility that maybe they don't have all the answers, right? I certainly do not have all the answers. And if there's one thing that I'm very clear on in my parenting, for example, is like when I screw up, when I make a mistake, when I'm wrong about something, I will own it with my kids. In a way that, first of all, models to them, the world is not going to fall apart if you make a mistake. Obviously, we're not talking about ginormous mistakes that have horrible consequences, right? We're talking about within the realm of acceptable, whatever. And, it's not the end of the world for you, and it's not the end of the world for anybody. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be wrong about something. I'm talking within a frame of ethical behavior where you're not hurting anybody, okay? Now, if you hurt someone's feelings, right? Or if you misunderstand something, that could be an example of you've hurt someone through a misunderstanding, and can you be open to that? Critical thinking in this instance, when it comes to this interpersonal relationships, would be where you're able to step out of yourself almost and assess your own role, let's say, in an interaction, or role in a conversation that didn't go the way you wanted, and see where you could maybe make a change. Now, that requires definitely a level of willingness to even step out of yourself and to be able to look at how you may have contributed to it, or what you may have said that may have been misinterpreted. And that requires getting out of your own way. Again, ego here. And it also means being okay with being wrong and maybe having to apologize. Okay? So critical thinking is not just, school and work and things like that. It's definitely a strength that can be brought into your personal relationships. So since I'm already starting here, like within your personal relationships that matter most to you today, how much does critical thinking, right, the ability to be open-minded, the ability to see things from another perspective, to be open to other opinions or other information, how much do you bring that into your relationships? Is that something that you can be open to, or are you in a relationship where maybe there's a power structure or a role that you think, like, I have to always be right because I'm the parent, or I'm the teacher, or I'm the this, or I'm the that, or you have, let's say, a history with a person and you know them in a certain way because of that history. Can you be open-minded, right? Can you be able to change your mind in light of the evidence of a person in their own growth, of a person in their own development, of a person in their own journey, which may be very different from how you knew them when they were little or when you knew them X number of years ago, right? So critical thinking is, and then, so how, just to follow that thread, like the way this helps you be happier and thrive and flourish is because in relationships, when you can see the other person, that empathy, being open to hearing what they have to say, not judging it, understanding their perspective, and being able to change your mind about something that impacts the group or the two of you or whatever it is, that increases the quality and the happiness you feel within that relationship. That helps make you guys get closer, okay? It's a humbling thing to be able to use critical thinking for yourself. And this also goes, let's move it into the world of work, okay? If you're working in an organization, for-profit, nonprofit, startup, whatever, the likelihood is that you need to bring that kind of critical thinking to the table with the work that you're doing, and also with your colleagues and that dynamic. And you're likely to get feedback, right? So how much of your ego can you kind of put aside when you get feedback? Can you be open to what someone has to say to you about either your performance or an interaction, right? So even though it may come across, let's say, as criticism or something painful or something you're not aware of, if you're able to bring and remember, even if you haven't used it much before, let's say in this context, you can bring your strength of critical thinking to the table for that review or for that conversation or for that promotion you're going for or for that job interview you're going for, right? And make it almost, an experiment in your own growth as a human being to see what information you get and then what can you do about maybe incorporating it, taking time to, let it sit with you and see what has merit, what maybe doesn't. That's a perspective. What did I do that contributed to that? And then maybe move forward with another conversation. So I know this is a mind strength, right? Critical thinking is a mind strength. This isn't like earlier we talked about love, which is a heart strength, right? But you can bring this in as well to improve those relationships and those connections and those things that you're striving for at work. And so that's one example. Obviously with school, if you're a student or a teacher, critical thinking is a big thing that's talked about, and how do we teach that and how do kids learn it? And so, just this idea of hearing, different opinions and getting evidence or asking people you think that or you present it. So what information do you have to kind of back it up, or how do you know that that's true? Going beyond the what into well, how do you know it? Why is that so? What other ways are there to maybe solve this or consider it? Or where else can we look for more information? Where else can we get more data about that, right? So this is a really, really good one. There is a lot out there, if you were to look up critical thinking and you want to go deeper. So that's one thing. I'm like biting my, I'm not going to move forward into like politics or like the state of the world or anything like that. But these are still skills that you can bring to your own analysis of the times we're in, your role in the relationships and the responsibilities that you have or the things that you want. And then how can you bring that openness in a time where it feels like there's a lot of closed-mindedness? It's almost shocking when you experience it personally how there's very like this way or that way thinking as opposed to like nuance, being able to hold two different ideas in both hands to discern what might make sense from within a larger amount of information. Does it have to be 100% true? Is it possible that a fraction of it is true? Can both sides of whatever it is have points that are worth maybe being open to hearing about and considering, right? But what happens when so the thing that can get in the way of critical thinking and using your critical thinking muscle, right, is, a lack of knowledge about whatever the topic is, a lack of willingness to get more knowledge, to get more information, and, misunderstanding what you're exposed to, misinterpreting it if you have a lens. So here again, we're talking about these strengths in every human being as a lens for empathy is how I like to look at it. Like when you see people for their character strengths or as part of who they are, it creates a lens, I think, of understanding and empathy, which we could use more of, okay? So are you using, your character strength of critical thinking to look at people with an open mind and look for those character strengths? Like what were to happen if you were, let's say, facing something that you really feel an emotional reaction to, whether it's something you see on the street or something you see online, and you were to just pause and say, okay, just for funsies, like, even though I totally disagree with what they're doing, to try and see the humanity in this person, because what's happening is there's a lot of demonization of other people. And there's a lot of writing off any possibility that there might be something of value in what they have to say. And I just, I think that if we're able to, even if we don't ultimately agree, right? If we can say, oh, they feel very strongly about this, and this is where we can try to spot the strength, if you will, right? They're definitely using their strength of leadership right there. The question is how they're using it, but it's there, right? Or, there's a strength of teamwork. Okay, so the way that these things work is they're not in a vacuum, okay? So obviously people are going to have different values, and they're going to have different ideas related to ethics and what is moral. So what I'll say for simplicity's sake is if it doesn't hurt someone else, right? Like the whole thing about strengths is that when they're used and when they're recognized, like these strengths, which will make us have, move that needle to a happier life, is that they don't take away from anybody else. Okay, so how can we use more of our character strength of critical thinking in a way that does not diminish another person? How can we use our character strength of critical thinking in a way that does not hurt another person? How can we use it in a way, okay, that opens the door to greater understanding, assuming that's what you want? If what people want is to shut it down and to force a certain way and to have, power or manipulation or, then like not interested in hearing what you have to say. Okay, so where might you be, in what topics or what subjects might you be like, I don't really care. Not interested in being open-minded here. I'm closed-minded about it, and that's good enough for me, and it's not relevant. So then take what I'm sharing on a micro level, right? Or on a level that you are open to, even to start there. Well, Fridays are my, pizza night with the gang or whatever, and someone decides they want to do something else. How much of you is reacting to but we always do, Jim never has a second cup of coffee at home. I'm just telling you, you can make it with something that's not as consequential or not as triggering, and see okay, can I be, open to that? And maybe, weigh the evidence, if you will, of we had a great time in a different kind of restaurant, and so I can change my mind about that. I mean, it seems like a silly example, but this idea of being open to changing your mind in light of evidence, in which this example is, having a good time with a bunch of friends on a Friday night and not having to always do the same thing. So there's a lot here. And what I also wanted to share is that, similar to what I was just saying about if you don't want to be a critical thinker related to things that trigger you, maybe just being aware of that, okay? But the strength of critical thinking is really helpful in resisting coercion and manipulation. So, I call my business Truly Great Life, right? And I haven't talked about my personal definition of truly great life. This is all about from a more positive psychology, perspective. But I think, people don't like to be coerced or manipulated. So just something to think about. If you don't want to be manipulated or coerced into doing something you don't want to do, or being told that this is propaganda or dogma and this is what you have to learn because I say so, or this is what you have to do in order to get X, unless if you're not bringing in critical thinking, if you're not considering different things, if you're not looking for evidence, then you're more at risk of, just going along, and it may not be in the way that you want to go along. So critical thinking, teaching it to our kids, teaching it to others, just for my point of view, for the purposes of having your truly great life. And as I mentioned, I think in the first video, a truly great life is one that you get to decide, what that looks like for you. But I don't think anyone should be able to say what that looks like for someone else. Okay? So by sharing in these videos about these character strengths, I'm hoping to in some way empower or inform you so that you can live it and go teach it to someone else, so that people have more a sense of knowing what they want, who they are, and how they can go about living it in the world. Okay? Critical thinking is part of that. Okay. So the other thing is, when you have that ability to see things from another perspective, that critical thinking skill, okay, you have an easier time with things going awry, things not being what you expected, times of change, times of transition. And as anyone who's been, here since the last couple of years, and all we're having is change and transition, right? There's a lot. We think we're getting our bearings, and then it's whoop, the rug is, pulled from. There is a lot going on. So these ways towards happy are also tools in your toolbox. Put them in your pocket. Take it out when you're oh my gosh, what is going on? And how am I going to deal with this? Oh, wait, I know. I have these character strengths. There are these qualities that are in every human being. Okay, so critical, thinking, what can I do here? All right, well, let's look at what is going on. Is there another way to look at it? Is there information I'm missing? What can I do? So in the service of, being equipped to be more resilient, to kind of, deal with the times that we're literally living in, critical thinking is not a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. It's something that we can choose to use more. It's something that we all have the capacity of, and it's it's a gift in our ability to just not be sheep and not be, on automatic pilot all the time, right? We don't need to be overthinking things all the time, but, when it comes to big things that you value, it's going to require some engagement and some analysis of what you want. And how are you going to, go get it? And how are you, as you progress in your journey of life, how are you going to know what data do you need? What information do you need to know if you're on the right path or not? And what information do you need to make a change? And how are you going to handle the bumps in the road of the consequences of that change? So knowing that you have the ability to think things through, get more data, be open-minded to the possibility that you're wrong, be open-minded to the possibility that you might have to change direction, be open to the possibility that there are other perspectives and other methods and other ways and other paths and other people, and that people may see it differently, and that's okay. This is a really juicy way, to have happiness. So I will wrap it up for now here. There's a lot more that could be said. I hope this was helpful, and I will end with just sharing, a lovely quote from the movie Total Recall, the original, not the remake, where Cueto is saying, "Open your mind." Okay, so just open your mind. Open your mind to other people and their opinions. It doesn't mean so that your brain drops out, and it doesn't mean you accept without questioning everyone else's opinion or information, but open your mind to the possibility that you have your view, remember our blind spots, and they have theirs, but when we kind of look and get more from other sources and other people, there's a possibility of expanding what we understand is true. There's a possibility of learning and growing and being able to enrich our lives by being closer to what is true in that situation, in that topic, in whatever. But we have to be open. So I would just say, open your mind. And thank you again. See you next time for way number 7.